In the wake of World War II and on the brink of the Cold War, then U.S. President Harry Truman initiated a major reshuffling of America's security institutions. He signed the National Security Act of 1947, consolidating Washington's military leadership. The act also created a National Security Council to advise the president and a Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to gather intel abroad.
It mostly worked, until it didn't. Half a century later, U.S. intel failed to prevent the terror attacks of 9/11. Thousands of Americans died on U.S. soil. President George Bush launched an invasion abroad, and at home he put his pen to work, signing that same year the Patriot Act.
We had the threat of catastrophic terrorism at the hands of radical Islamist organizations that really had not been factored into national security law or strategy in the United States.
Providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. PATRIOT. The act included the first of many changes to U.S. surveillance laws, changes critics say that made it easier for Washington to spy on ordinary Americans. The following year, another act combined 22 different federal departments and agencies into one unified entity, coined the Department of Homeland Security. The new cabinet-level department became one of America's biggest and most powerful. The DHS would largely focus on federal preparedness for terrorism, but its duties would quickly cross over into border security and customs, drawing calls for its scope to be scaled back.
I don't know anyone who would assert that the system here is perfect. We're constantly striving to perfect it.
The motion is agreed to.
In 2015, the USA Freedom Act reauthorized most of the Patriot Act. It limited the collection of metadata, namely phone logs and banking records, by the National Security Agency, but extended Washington's legal cover for almost everything else.
The debate is still going on today as to whether or not there should be a Department of Homeland Security 19 years later. And what do you do about FISA? What do you do about wiretapping and the like? And how do you deal with private companies that are collecting data? And to what extent should that data be surrendered over to the government when there's a national security concern?
It's unlikely November's presidential election will usher in any reforms. Many of the more recent changes to America's security strategy were drafted by Republicans and upheld, even enforced, by Democrats. Roe Ruttenberg, CGTN in Washington.